all interned, 120,000 of us, in internment camps throughout the United States. We were uprooted from our families and neighborhoods. I was born and raised in Sacramento. I was 6 months old at the time, and obviously I wasn't given a trial nor any charges were imposed against me, but for the next 2.5 years, I, my mother, father, and sister were interned in barbed wired camps in the United States of America.
Lieutenant General J.L. DeWitt issued the order to relocate the Japanese, as nearly 100,000 persons were uprooted and forced into camps far from home, some for years. DeWitt warned the American public to, quote, worry about the Japanese all the time until he is wiped off the map, end quote. The only charge against these people, potential disloyalty, against which no law exists. Throughout the entire period of confinement, not one resident Japanese American was ever convicted of sabotage or espionage, although many white persons were. Fear, ignorance, and intolerance are still as powerful now as they were then. Could large religious groups, disloyal to officially sanctioned forms of religious worship, be the next to reside in concentration camps? Shocking parallels between America 1984 and pre-Nazi Germany indicate that the barbed wire may already be in place. 40 years ago, the city of Pawtucket, Rhode Island, erected a Christmas display, which included a nativity scene in one of the town's parks. In 1984, the lower courts determined that the nativity scene violated the principle of church and state separation. Although the Supreme Court has since ruled that the Christmas setting is a proper observance of a traditional holiday, there is continued resistance to such toleration of religious displays in public places.
About a week before Christmas in 1980, the mayor of the city of Pawtucket, Mayor Lynch, called me in with reference to a case that had just been filed, and a restraining order had been requested against the maintenance of the city's nativity scene, which had been displayed for approximately 40 years by the city.
We received a complaint from a resident of Pawtucket in 1980 who was concerned that the city was, in fact, sponsoring a nativity scene display as part of a larger Christmas display. We did some investigation and found out that, in fact, it was the city's own display. It used city workers to put it up. City money had been used to pay for it. And it was our feeling that city sponsorship of a clearly sectarian display like a nativity scene violated the First Amendment and the principle of separation of church and state.
During the trial, since it occurred in February and it was impossible to actually go and to view the display, which by that time had been dismantled, both sides, through photographs, attempted to emphasize certain aspects of what the city was sponsoring. The plaintiffs presented pictures of the nativity scene almost in isolation, as though what the city was doing was simply sponsoring a nativity scene. We, on the other hand, introduced photographs which showed the entire display, including lights and trees and Santa Claus and snowmen and Christmas carolers and a banner declaring season's greetings, in order to demonstrate that what we were doing was celebrating a public holiday and not simply displaying a religious symbol in isolation.
I had to oppose the attempt to foster non-religion on people. I mean, how do you expect, in my opinion, how do you expect any mayor to not announce or acknowledge a holiday in a truthful fashion? The ACLU is fond of having a great many cases in the censorship area. But now they expect me to censor Christmas, Christ Mass, 1984, a long tradition in this country. Suddenly I am to remove an element of that display. No way. And that's basically what the Supreme Court said.
In 1933, Hitler said that when he controlled the education of the children, he could calmly say to any opponent, "Your child belongs to us already. What are you?" In 1936, he abolished Christian schools in Germany.
This is not America. How could it be? Oh, my God. My God.
Glad I don't draw you men's paychecks.
Oh, God. Do you men have a conscience? Do you men realize what you're doing under God, under heaven? God save America. Oh, my God, my God.
For refusing to turn over control of a church school to the state, a Nebraska pastor was arrested on September 3rd, 1982.
Well, when the sheriff arrested me for the first time, I was shocked. It was unbelievable to think that law officers would come into the church and actually take people who are not committing crimes. The church has always been a sanctuary, and I suppose it took really about a day for it to sink in.
Reverend Silverman in? About 20.
Well, if you tell me what you're here for, I'll be glad to go with you. Am I under arrest?
You are under arrest. I have a warrant for your arrest.
All right, Sheriff. Let me say this, Sheriff, tonight, kids, we're not mad at the sheriff. He's just doing what he's told to do. And so I don't want you to be mad at him, okay? All right. All right. Can we go out this way?
Okay.
All right.
This man is being arrested for running a church school where the students have consistently scored higher on statewide achievement tests than children attending local public schools.
I was watching them at this moment take my husband away and put him in jail for teaching our boys and girls about Christ. And so that was not ringing true.
It hurt me to see that my dad was looked at as a villain when I knew him to be one of the most kind men I have ever known, to be really concerned about the children and the people in this church. And yet people who didn't even know him were writing him up as if he were a criminal. A judge was sentencing him to jail as though he were a rapist or a murderer. He would share a cell with someone who had stolen and destroyed property, and within a few days they would be out, but he was still serving a sentence.
My days were really heavy because therefore I had to take care of his office and my office, and much media was around, and so my days were very heavy, and so at nights I was quite tired, and I thought, well, I will just go off to sleep. But then again, when you lay your arm over, or you are used to laying in someone's arm at night, it was quite lonely.
When I found out that the pastor had gone to jail, I felt kind of angry because he was trying to teach us how to do right, and he went to jail for that.
And so I would write 10 to 12-page letters daily to him to encourage him and to keep him up on the news. I would write and brag on him and love him through my letters. I would send him fruit and send little notes in his pockets when I would wash his clothes, little love notes. And when he would put on this pair of pants and stick his hands in the pockets, there he'd find a note.
Right. Judge Case is a lawbreaker.
That's right.
He has trampled upon the Constitution of the United States and upon the Constitution of this state of Nebraska.
That's right. The word of God.
1 month after jailing the pastor, Sheriff Tetch returned to empty and padlock the church by force because members refused to compromise their religious and constitutional rights.
This order directs me to secure this building with locks so as to prevent holding school in the building without following the state law requiring a certified teacher. But at this time, I and members of the Nebraska State Patrol will escort you from this building so we can comply with this order signed by the judge.
Do you men have a conscience? Do you men realize what you're doing under God, under heaven?
Well, the judge has always been against this, and he's not one time been here. He's always sending the sheriff down here or something like that. And I'd wish if he was really going to condemn us like that he'd come down here and see what's happening. And then I wish he'd go to the public schools and see what's happening. This will be the first year, God willing, that we'll be able to have a full year of school.
The change of events that brought the legislature to change the law, basically I think the primary part played in that was the parents. When the men went to jail and the women were exiled from their own homes with their children, that was the initial turning point in my thinking.
When I learned that my husband was in jail, first I cried because I thought, why? But then I realized, well, our preacher had been there before, and it did not surprise us, but yet it hurt us.
The message I would like to give Americans is this: let's stop giving away our religious liberty, our constitutional liberties. Let's continue to practice them. Let's stand for them in spite of what the cost may be. Eventually, the government is going to give up trying to do all this regulation if we will only be persistent.